Something just happened which has really never happened before.
An extraordinary act of charity.
Patagonia's founder,
Yvon Chouinard,
is now giving away his entire multi-billion-dollar business he started nearly 50 years ago.
Why would he do that?
There's not one company that will voluntarily restrict their growth for the sake of saving the planet.
How the hell did you manage to stay in business?
I never intended to be a businessman. Businessmen were greaseballs.
So how exactly did a dirtbagging rock climber with an aversion to capitalism build one of the wealthiest outdoor brands of all time? In 2021, Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard officially made his way onto the Forbes list as a billionaire. He was really off. We're a billion-dollar company, and I don't want to be a billion-dollar company. The day they announced it to me, I hung my head in shame and said, oh God, I knew it would come to this. This was the catalyst for Chouinard to make the most radical in a series of what most might consider to be bad business decisions. When readers of the New York Times opened their newspaper on the morning of Black Friday 2011, one of the biggest consumer days of the year, they were greeted with a full-page spread of plain black text alongside a simple catalogue image of a grey Patagonia jacket. The text simply read, "Don't buy this jacket." The message, provocative anti-consumerism. The advertiser responsible, Patagonia themselves. Founded over 5 decades ago, Patagonia's disruptive anti-consumer narrative has definitely garnered a reputation in the outdoor industry. With purpose-driven, seemingly counterintuitive advertising campaigns, rebellious innovation, and a focus on environmental activism, the company has captured the attention of the market in a way that a conventional marketing strategy could never. Now a $3 billion global juggernaut, Patagonia has been showing for years that brands can be both radically responsible and extremely profitable. Just 2 years after the Don't Buy This Jacket campaign, Patagonia's revenue was $570 million. Sales grew 25% in the middle of the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis, and by 2017, Patagonia was taking $1 billion in sales. That same year, the company launched its Warmwear initiative, accepting used or damaged Patagonia items to be repaired and resold, encouraging responsible purchasing and urging customers to buy only what they need. Everything man does creates more harm than good, Chouinard explained in an interview with Bolster. We have to accept that fact and not delude ourselves into thinking something is sustainable. Then you can try and achieve a situation where you're causing the least amount of harm possible. That's the spin we put on it. It's a never-ending summit. You're just climbing forever, you'll never get to the top, but it's the journey. One only has to look back over Yvon's younger years to understand that that is a journey that Yvon has been on his whole life. Before we get to the most radical of Chouinard's business decisions, let us have a word from the sponsor of today's Climbing Explained, Ren. Business people or not business people, every single one of us has an impact on the planet by going about our daily lives, just driving to the Crag or the indoor gym or heating our homes. We emit CO2. Ren is a website where you can calculate your carbon footprint and then offset it. So Ren offsets emissions by funding a really wide range of carbon reduction projects like tree planting, mineral weathering, and rainforest protection. For example, Ren's biochar project is helping to prevent wildfires in California by removing dead and flammable trees and then turning those trees into biochar, which is a process that keeps carbon out of the air for thousands of years. Being part of the solution to our changing climate should be a priority for every climber. Perhaps you've been looking into more sustainable travel to crags and try to stay mindful of the impact the manufacture of your climbing gear has. But another great tool for your toolkit would be offsetting your CO2. So if you do fancy doing some good and offsetting your carbon footprint with Ren, you can do that using the link in the description. And the first 100 people who sign up will have 10 extra trees planted in their name, which is pretty cool. So thank you very much to Ren for sponsoring this video, and now back to the world of business. A passionate climber and a self-described dirtbag, Yvon's story begins with tales of catching ground squirrels, eating cat food out of the back of his van, and dodging rangers in the national parks he camped and climbed in. Chouinard spent much of his 20s dirtbagging around the Alps and Yosemite, climbing as much as he could and spending most nights sleeping outside. He quickly became one of the most talented climbers in the US, making first ascents of difficult routes with some of climbing's greats, including Royal Robbins, Fred Beckey, and Dean Tompkins. We took special pride in the fact that climbing rocks and icefalls had no economic value in society. Chouinard wrote in his book, "We were rebels from the consumer culture." And that culture has underpinned Yvon's career. but ironically, also his journey to billionaire status. But can you really be a multimillionaire and a dirtbag? Chouinard would argue so, claiming he doesn't even have a savings account. Being a dirtbag is a matter of philosophy, not personal wealth. I'm an existential dirtbag. Today, Chouinard has a mobile phone, but admits he rarely turns it on and he doesn't use email to communicate. He drives an old Subaru and lives a modest life fishing and hunting in his spare time. Nick Paumgarten of the New York Times notes, now and then he checks in with the office. Patagonia headquarters and his primary home are in Ventura, California, but for days at a time, no one really knows where he is. Melinda, his wife, sends emails to the people he's supposed to be with in case there are things that he should hear or do. He has frequently disappeared for months, sometimes for half the year, to climb, kayak, surf, ski, fish, and ramble around the planet's wilder precincts. With $820 borrowed from his parents, Chouinard began making his own climbing tools in the 60s. He taught himself blacksmithing in a small workshop behind his parents' house, and eventually began to make his own pitons and carabiners. He just wanted to make enough money to go climbing. I never wanted to be a businessman. I started as a craftsman, making climbing gear for my friends and myself, and then I got into apparel, said Chouinard. Perhaps more out of necessity than business thinking, Chouinard equipment was born when Chouinard's climbing partners began to ask for items of their own. A catalogue was pulled together, the one-sheet list of prices warned buyers not to expect too much in the summer months because Chouinard would probably be busy, for that was climbing season. In Scotland, in the winter of 1970, Chouinard bought a rugby shirt to wear whilst rock climbing, as the thick collar kept his hardware slings, loaded with heavy equipment, from cutting into his neck. He kept wearing the top, which was azure blue, with 2 red and 1 yellow stripes. When back in the US, his climbing friends asked where they could get one. Chouinard's business grew, meeting demand by the environmentally conscious consumer for quality gear with a conscience. Revenue skyrocketed from $20 million to $100 million by the end of the 1980s, but Chouinard became more and more ill at ease with his success, shunning the word businessman and begrudging the compromises that followed great achievement in the corporate world. I was faced with the prospect of owning a billion-dollar company with thousands of employees making outdoor-like clothing for posers. Patagonia, Chouinard felt, was losing its fundamental origins. So, in defiance, the company rebelled against productivity culture, making private offices defunct in the 1980s and promoting an environment in which staff felt free of the shackles of the American dream. Work had to be enjoyable on a daily basis. We all had to come to work on the balls of our feet and go up the stairs 2 steps at a time. We needed to be surrounded by friends who could dress whatever way they wanted, even be barefoot if they wanted, he wrote in his memoir, An Ode to Counterculture, Let My People Go Surfing. I wanted to distance myself as far as possible from those pasty-faced corpses in suits I saw in airline magazine ads. If I had to be a businessman, I was going to do it on my own terms. But Patagonia's upwards trajectory wasn't all plain sailing. In 1991, the economic crisis nearly propelled Patagonia to bankruptcy, and Chouinard had to reconsider his company's whole ethos. Nick Paumgarten describes, Chouinard's accountants took him to meet a representative of the mafia, who offered a loan with an interest rate of 18%. He declined the offer, but the company lost 20% of its workforce, destabilizing the dynamic Yvon was so proud of. Patagonia was becoming less the enterprise of like-minded workers enjoying the fruits of the good life. It was hard, Chouinard said. I realised we were just growing for the sake of growing, which is bullshit. I'm sure he's made what some people might consider not smart business decisions in order to have his ethics drive his business, Susie Tompkins Buell, friend of Chouinard, told Forbes. He didn't create a culture of things you want, he tried to create a culture of things that would serve you. I've been a businessman for almost 60 years, Chouinard says. It's as difficult for me to say those words as it is for someone to admit to being an alcoholic or a lawyer. I've never respected the profession. It's business that has to take the majority of the blame for being the enemy of nature. As we began to witness the extent of global warming and ecological destruction and our own contribution to it, Patagonia committed to using our company to change the way business was done. If we could do the right thing whilst making enough to pay the bills, we could influence customers and other businesses and maybe change the system along the way. As explained by Forbes, the real industry leaders will be those who understand the need for profits, whilst continually improving their sustainability efforts through strategic and operational planning. Patagonia has shown that it is indeed possible to put responsible action before profits. It's been almost 50 years since we started our experiment in responsible business, and we're just getting started, said Chouinard. If we have any hope for a thriving planet, a thriving business, then 50 years from now, we will all have to do what we can with the resources we have. This is another way we have done our part. In 2022, Chouinard announced that he would be giving away the company to the Patagonia Purpose Trust and the Holdfast Collective Fund at a reported value of $3 billion. Chouinard explained in a letter posted to the company's website, "Every dollar that is not reinvested back into Patagonia will be distributed to the company's only remaining shareholder, the planet." Patagonia has donated almost $90 million to grassroots activist organisations over the past 35 years, including community projects and those working with land and water, and have donated funds and services wherever possible to protect the natural world. At the end of the day, Patagonia still makes clothes, arguably more clothes than we really need, and as such is still part of the consumer problem. Patagonia will never be completely socially responsible, and Chouinard accepts this. It will never make a totally sustainable, non-damaging product, Chouinard admits, but it is committed to trying. We simply don't have any other choice. As the late environmentalist David Brower once put it, there's no business to be done on a dead planet. He never had any intentions to make money anyway, said his friend Tompkins Buell. He hasn't changed through all of this, she says. Whatever he's wanted to do, he's done because he believes in it. He believes in challenging himself to scale up a mountain that no one's ever climbed before, or just to go off a trip by himself and fish all day and not eat much. To live gently.
Enjoyed that video? I bet you'll love this one. Go on, click it.